Hello, I'd like to deposit this to checking.
Fate is a fickle master.
What?
The future is uncertain.
Okay, and what's my account balance?
The horizon is cloudy. I see a long, treacherous voyage filled with great peril.
Look, can I just get a deposit slip or something?
A fortune bank teller. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
I see a yellow-eyed serpent and a low APR.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
We are men of simple tastes. Golick and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Steven Jackson, our NBA analyst, will join us in just a little bit. But just listening to that's your highlight in that little intro there. Just a beer named after you.
I'm a simple man.
Sandwich.
Had a sandwich named after me. If I get a beer named after me, we'll have Sean Payton 9:30 Eastern on this show. He has a beer named after him right now.
Pretty solid.
Again, simple things. Name a sandwich and a beer after me. Pair them together, and I'm golden.
I'm almost surprised that Sean hasn't already had a beer named after him in New Orleans after everything that he's done for that city with bringing, listen, again, it bears repeating. Before Sean Payton and Drew Brees got there, I think they had one playoff win. I mean, or just very few. What they've done in their time has they put the Saints on the map.
They really have. And the fans and the team really have to be happy is the way they did it winning that Super Bowl is the way they're doing it right now. Yeah. They got a running game, and now they have a running game. They had one then, and the defense is playing well, and you have Drew Brees.
Just in case, if the running game doesn't work out, you always have Drew Brees to throw it around. Which the running game didn't work in that win over Carolina, and Drew certainly bailed him out. But it is a much tougher test coming up in Minnesota against that Vikings defense, which has playmakers across the board from defensive line all the way back to corners. And how about Terrence Newman, by the way? Terrence Newman at 39 years old.
Incredible.
I mean, 39-year-old balling cornerbacks are like unicorns. They don't exist.
Yeah, it's very true.
For him to be doing what he's doing is pretty impressive. So lots to get into. Sean Payton will join us in the 9 o'clock hour. Steven Jackson coming up in just a little minute. But let us get to what's trending. And the good news in this story hopefully will continue, but Texas upset number 16 TCU in their first game since Andrew Jones' cancer diagnosis. The Longhorns needed double-digit overtime to earn their biggest win, just after they learned star sophomore guard Andrew Jones had been diagnosed with leukemia.
Yeah, obviously a big win for the program, but more importantly is what's going to go on in this game in this game really of life for Andrew Jones. He was the leading scorer, hurt his wrist, and was sidelined for several games in December. When he returned, he complained of being tired and hardly played. He actually missed the game last weekend against Baylor while undergoing tests, and now in him being diagnosed, he's starting the treatment for leukemia. So, again, a big win for the team, but more importantly, thoughts and prayers and everything for Andrew Jones and his family as he goes through this.
Most importantly, we hope the bigger win comes down the road.
Exactly
we know that Andrew Jones will be free of cancer and having beaten leukemia, and we wish him all the best there. Staying with what's trending, again, it's a family affair, it's looking like, for the Turners, as Norv Turner finalizing to be the Panthers' new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, so they fired Mike Shula, who was the O coordinator. Ken Dorsey, who was the quarterback coach. They have both been fired. So brought in has been Norv Turner, who was the head coach in San Diego when Ron Rivera was his D coordinator from 07 to 10 for 3 years. So now they kind of flip-flop with Ron being the head coach and Norv being the O coordinator. Norv has helped, while being a head coach at a few teams, has helped kind of bring along quarterbacks, develop quarterbacks, Troy Aikman, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, some pretty big names out there. He's going to be brought in to really help Cam Newton develop more as well. Along with that, Norv's son Scott, who his last two stops had been at colleges, Michigan and Minnesota, as helping with the quarterbacks at those places. He will serve as a quarterback coach. Also, there are more Turners there. Norv's brother Ron is an offensive consultant, and Norv's nephew Cameron is an assistant quarterback coach. So a lot of Turners in Carolina right now. But the main thing is Norv coming there to try and get more out of Cam Newton. We saw the MVP of the league a couple of years ago in like a wow moment of what he could do, and it hasn't been that since. So how can Norv help that offense along?
Well, the one thing that he's going to need to do with Cam, he's got to get better on third down.
Yeah.
That has been the bugaboo for even in his MVP season of 2015. I think he was just over 50% or right around 50% on third down completion. So, the one thing with Norv Turner, you're going to have a running game and you're going to have a playmaking tight end. That wherever he's been, that has been the situation. So, if you're Greg Olson, you love the hiring of Norv Turner. If you're Christian McCaffrey, I think you like the idea of bringing in Norv Turner because they'll find ways to get him more involved in that offense. And again, I have to believe that Norv will do a really good job in getting Cam Newton a little better on third down as well. And there's trolling, and then there's trolling. UCF fans buy a billboard in Tuscaloosa asking for a series with Alabama. 37 fans of the Golden Knights raised over $1,600 on a GoFundMe page to pay for a digital billboard which reads, "Congratulations, Alabama. How about a home-and-home series with UCF?"
Quite honestly, I think that's fantastic.
I agree.
The national champion stuff was cute, and then it went a little overboard. It got too far. They're not the national champions. You're not. It was cool to talk about it. You were undefeated. I get it. Giving the coaches their bonuses, and out of that, the players will get shirts
and hats.
Shirts and hats. But it started to go a little bit too far. This I like. Hey, how about a home and home? I think that would be fantastic because that's a team, not a Power Five that other Power Fives would look at and say, do I want a home and home with them? Do I want to go down that road with that team that played that well? But I think that's fantastic. That's a great way to do it. Because that's the way they're going to play. They're unfortunately, while there's 4 teams, Alabama is never going to meet UCF in a playoff game at the end of the year. So this would be the only way they could match up in a home and home. I think it'd be awesome.
Well, remember, we ran the numbers if they expanded the playoffs to 8, which again, the committee says they don't want to do, but I still think it's coming sooner than they think it is.
Right.
We ran the numbers with UCF's unbeaten season last year, and you had the research run them. And what happened when we expanded the playoff field to 8?
Well, what happened was, and we used the old BCS format, which took the human element out of it, was all computers. It was the exact same 8 as the committee had, but it was a different order. The BCS, the computer had UCF 9th, so they wouldn't even have been in the top 8.
So really the only way for them to get those computer numbers up would be to play people like Alabama, right? That's the only way to get that strength of schedule.
And here's the thing. Yeah. They would play Alabama.
I'm not
Would
sure.
Alabama play them?
Well, again, what's in it for them?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly right.
I mean, are you going to play UCF or Mercer?
Yeah.
Because playing Mercer worked for them.
Playing Mercer. It
worked for them. So again, kudos to UCF.
Yes.
And I love the idea.
Look,
I would love to see this happen.
Yep, me too.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see it happen. Okay. As we continue here on Golic and Wingo, we have reached what we like to call the nominal halfway point of the NBA season, as it is kind of, we're halfway there, not really. Some teams have played 43 games. Some teams have played 40. Look,
let's just go with we're halfway.
It's a jumping point, okay? Yeah. Leave us alone. If we decided today's the halfway point, we're sticking with it. And ESPN's NBA analyst Steven Jackson joins us to talk about the nominal halfway point on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Stephen, always great to have you on the show. First and foremost, what has been the most surprising thing for you so far halfway through the NBA season?
Morning, fellas. I think the surprising thing for me is, definitely how Boston bounced back from the horrific start with having Gordon Hayward go down and being able to sustain it and be solid throughout the season so far. I think that was my biggest thing. I knew they were going to be good, but I didn't expect Gordon Hayward to go down first game of the season. I didn't expect him to be able to hold it down while he's out. I'm definitely surprised with the way Brad Stevens has these guys playing right now.
So spinning that even forward to the playoffs, do you think they have enough in a 7-game series to knock off Cleveland?
I think they have enough, but at the end of the day, I'm always leaning towards the Kane, K-E-N-G, LeBron James. Just what he's been able to do his whole career and up to now is as far as getting better and look like he's getting younger. I will never go against him. I think in order for me to go against him, I have to see it done. But those guys definitely have the tools, all the tools they need to be able to beat Cleveland.
Well, one of the big things that Cleveland is looking forward to in the second half is Steven Jackson is with us, our NBA analyst who played 14 seasons in the NBA, was a champ with the Spurs in 2003. Obviously, Isaiah Thomas. What have you made of Isaiah Thomas's sort of easing into the Cavs lineup so far, and what should be reasonable expectations for the rest of the season?
Well, he needs to get applauded for taking care of his body and for taking this rehab serious. I mean, 9 out of 10 times when you've gone from the game that long, your timing is off. It takes a lot of time to get in shape and get your timing right. Well, he walked right in the game. His first game back was solid on offense. His time he didn't look like he'd been out. I think he took his rehab real serious and came back ready to play. And, when they come to the end of the games, they're going to be real dangerous when they run that pick and roll with him and LeBron. It's going to be hard to guard.
And with how about any other team in the East? We talk about Boston. How about Toronto?
Right.
With what they're doing right now, sitting there second in the conference as Cleveland is third. I know it doesn't matter right now, but outside of Boston, is there another team, and is it Toronto that could challenge Cleveland?
Well, I definitely DeMar DeRozan hasn't been talked about enough. He's been having a great year. I think he's a more athletic version of Rip Hamilton. He's been having a great year, has his team in the top 3 teams in the East. Also, I think, you can't never count Milwaukee and Washington out in the East. These guys have a great group of young guys that continue to grow, and they're getting better, and they need that playoff experience. But these guys, the Greek Freak, John Wall, these guys can win a couple games by themselves, especially in the playoffs. I don't know about beating Cleveland, but all these young guys have an opportunity to make some noise in the playoffs, and we'll see if they do so.
Well, look, we're about halfway to getting to the playoffs, where it really gets interesting, as ESPN's NBA analyst Steven Jackson is with us. Steven, did you ever think that Kevin Durant being the second fastest to 20,000 points with a 40-point game wouldn't be the headline coming out of that game? I mean, Lou Williams certainly cared not for Kevin Durant's thunder, for lack of a better term.
Well, Lou Williams is like a little brother to me. I live in Atlanta, so I play on his ABL team every year. I've seen Lou get 50 points off free throws. I've seen Lou get 40 points off all three-pointers. So I know he can score. He's been doing this his whole career. He's just on a bigger stage now where he's seeing that this guy can play. He can flat out score. I hope he makes the All-Star team, because what he's been doing, even though they're not in the playoffs, what he's been doing in the Clippers with all the ups and downs with the injuries, I think it's been great. But KD, we all know KD's going to go down one of the best ever. I'm not surprised. I played against KD for a long time. And he came in the game special. I mean, being able to be 7 foot, to dribble and shoot like he has, we haven't seen that. He's going to continue to break records, and I'm definitely a big fan of KD as well.
Yeah, Lou Williams, again, though, to put a bow on that, 50 points in that game, 16 three-pointers he took. He hit 8 of them, 27 shots overall, but it's Kevin Durant with 40 points, second youngest to get to 20,000 points. And let's look at the Western Conference. Now, team-wise first, Golden State, we've seen Kevin Durant miss some games with the calf injury. We've seen Steph Curry miss some with the ankle. He comes back, but then he tweaks it in shoot-around. Is there concern for you about the health of this team throughout the season?
No, I think that's, these little injuries, well, not necessarily Steph, but KD, the calf, I think that's more of resting him now. He carried on the low while Steph was gone. Steph's coming back, and now he's out again. I think for the most part, I think Steph is the only one that's really dealing with injuries. Anytime any other guy's sitting out, it's to rest and try to keep them fresh coming towards the end of the season. I don't think they'll have any injury problems. Like I said, Steph's going through a little bug right now, but I think he'll be fine towards the end of the season.
Steven Jackson with us, our NBA analyst, as we're at the nominal halfway point of the regular season, take stock of what we've seen so far, what we might expect going forward. Steven, one of the most interesting teams for a while at the start of this season was the Philadelphia 76ers. It looked like they were trusting the process. Things were going well. Joel Embiid is a joy to watch, and obviously Ben Simmons has done great stuff, and Markelle Fultz is back. But they've stumbled a little bit now. They're sitting at the 9-hole outside of the playoffs. Granted, we're only halfway there, but what are reasonable expectations for this team going forward, which looked so promising early, and now they're just at 500?
Well, they got 2 players that can be dominant players, that can be all-stars every year, fight for MVP vote. They have 2 guys. These guys, if they continue to get better, they're going to be dangerous. I actually think if they start playing with a sense of urgency and playing like they want to make the playoffs, I think they can make it. They have everything they need. Joel's starting to play more and more minutes. He's starting to play better. I think that they can make the playoffs in the East. I just think they have to play with a sense of urgency. But the 2 stars that they have in Simmons and Embiid, I'm excited to see where the direction they're going in. But I definitely think they can make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and also Markelle Fultz, he kind of intimating that maybe you're going to start to see him as he's been practicing, get him on the floor. Hadn't been on the floor playing ball since October, got that shoulder injury, so we'll see how that comes back. Just how I asked you in the East of who can contend with the Cavs. How about in the West? We're trying to get the fact of Chris Paul and Harden on the floor at the same time, but one seems to always be injured, but still just 11 losses for them on the year, second in the conference. Are they or anybody else in the conference a legitimate threat to Golden State?
Well, we always know Spurs. If they can get Kawhi healthy going into the playoffs. If they're healthy going into the playoffs with the coach they have, they're gonna make adjustments. They're gonna make some noise. The only thing I worry about with Houston, I think they Chris Paul and James Harden are definitely having great years. They get James Harden back healthy going into the playoffs, they'll be fine. I'm just thinking when the playoffs come, teams make adjustments a lot, and they're gonna take James Harden completely out. how many games can Chris Paul carry the team? And is he going to be healthy going into the end of the season? We all hope so because we want to see them do well in the playoffs and see what kind of noise they can make. But I'm always worried because in playoffs, teams make adjustments. When they take James completely out the game, double his pick and rolls, don't give him no room to throw those lobs and those type of things, who else is going to step up besides Chris Paul? That's what I'm worried about with them. But I really feel that Minnesota, San Antonio, go OKC too, to where they're playing, they're starting to pick it up. All those teams can make noise, but you still have a tough monster when you're going against Golden State.
Stephen, I'm glad you brought up Oklahoma City because when we had you in studio earlier, you didn't think they were ever going to really figure it out because there's only one ball. And, Russell Westbrook makes it pretty clear that's his friend on the court. But they have picked it up a little bit. What have you seen different in their game now as opposed to what you were seeing earlier in the regular season?
Well, what I did say, I said towards the end of the season, they will get it going and they will be rolling into the playoffs. I said at the beginning of the season, it was going to be hard for them to figure out who was the man. And like you said, it was one ball, and I knew it was going to take some time. And everybody's like, they're not going to get it done. I knew it was going to start off. You got three dominant personalities, three Hall of Fame basketball players that's playing together. It's going to take a little while. They're starting to figure it out now. They're starting to win. They're going to make some noise in the playoffs. Are they going to be healthy is the question.
Who's your MVP at this point?
My MVP, I have it a tie between James Harden and Kyrie.
Kyrie, wow. I mean, he wanted to be the man, and he's certainly being that in Boston so far this season. By the way, we're coming up, getting close to the All-Star game. What do you think of the All-Star format this year and how they're going to figure that thing out?
Let me say this too, and LeBron is always in the run for
All-Star. That's a perennial. That's a given.
That's a given.
That's a given.
We
Steven.
knew that.
But All-Star, I really don't. I just don't like the favoritism. I think it should be guys that really understand the game, like you guys. Some people that really understand basketball and understand the guys that are having the type of years that deserve to be an All-Star. I never made it my whole career, but I don't think it's one person that knows me. I know the way I played that looked at my career a couple years and said I didn't deserve it. Well, I hate for other guys who, like Lou Williams, who's having great years, other guys who's having great years that might not make it because of they don't have the popularity or they don't have as many fans. I think, it should be really knocked down to guys in the years they're having. And I think when you get to all that fan vote, it kind of pulls away from the integrity of the game.
Stephen, how about a rookie of the year? There have been some impressive rookies out there. I'm always amazed at some of these one-and-dones, how they come in and are able to play so well right away against the men in the NBA. But where do you lean to as the top rookies?
Well, definitely Simmons. Definitely Tatum. I love Tatum's game. I think that's probably my favorite rookie right now, Tatum and Simmons. The kid in L.A., Kuzma, he's going to be pretty good. Also, Ball's going to be pretty good. But Tatum and Simmons, those two guys are high on my list. Being able to be that size, Tatum leading the league in three-point percentage at that size, and also he's been showing he can finish at the rim. Ben Simmons can do everything. If he gets a jump shot, it's going to be scary. You're looking at LeBron 2.0 if he can get a jump shot. So those young guys are scary. I'm happy to see where the league's going. It's not as physical as it used to be, so guys are getting away with a lot. Guys are able to score more. I don't think guys are taking pride on defense as much as they used to. But as far as the talent-wise, the game is in good hands.
Well, it certainly feels like the game is in good hands, and the ratings have actually proved that. The ratings have been up, and the interest in the NBA has been great, and it's been an interesting first half of the season. We will certainly see how it plays out throughout the rest of the season. Stephen, thanks for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Y'all have a good one.
You too, brother. Stephen Jackson, 14 seasons.
It's interesting, too, with that breakdown, because I agree. Tatum for Boston is incredible. And Ben Simmons, that's what's interesting about the NBA. Ben Simmons is still eligible for the Rookie of the Year. Ben Simmons was in the league last year. He just didn't play. Yeah. He was hurt all year, but you're still eligible for the Rookie of the Year. So it's kind of odd. And Kuzma, again, Lonzo Ball gets a lot of the pub out in L.A., and I understand he's a good player, but Kuzma has really come in and really shown some scoring ability for the Lakers. But I do like the young players, but I am always amazed at these 19-year-olds coming into a league full of, I think NBA players are the best athletes in the world. And you get these guys coming in at 19 years old, and some of them just not missing a beat from 1 year of college and coming in and being as good as they are.
And that's the adjustment for so many because the physicality is something that's such a different level in the NBA. What did Kristaps Porzingis say recently? He's so tired.
So tired.
Already.
Even though the physicality, to some of the guys like Steven Jackson said, the physicality isn't as much as it was.
Well, it wasn't the 90s.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the 90s.
You have to wear some pads. And I am interested. Boston playing Philadelphia in London out there. Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
Is it? I'm sorry, for Philadelphia. Is when is he going to get on the floor?
Right.
Like I said, he's doing his rite of passage in Philly. Embiid missing time, Ben Simmons missing time, Fultz missing time. But if he can get on the floor, can he be a help to push this team into the playoffs?
Well, look, they're hoping that would actually be the case. But if you had only one on your team, who would you take, Simmons or Tatum? You had to take one of those guys.
Man,
I think I'd have to go Simmons.
I think
point,
Simmons.
Right?
That size.
It's nothing against Tatum.
I
but
know.
That size.
I know that size to handle the ball, and like Steven says, that's what everybody, the basketballers, say about Ben Simmons. If and when he can get a shot, look out.
Yeah.
Well, how scary he could be if he can get one.
So we're at the halfway point of the NBA season, nominally.
Can we stop the nominal thing?
Nah,
it's
Stanzik.
That's the dumbest word known to mankind. We're at the halfway mark. Just leave it at that.
Do you know what nominal means?
I don't care what nominal means. That's probably why I want to get rid of it.
The answer to the question is no. You don't know what nominal means.
No.
So, by the way, if you believe in history, are you a history buff? You believe in historical trends, all
Absolutely
that kind of stuff? Okay, well, this isn't for you then.
Go ahead.
Because history, if you believe in history and recent trends, we already know who's winning the NBA championship.
Okay.
All right, follow me. 2012, Alabama wins the national championship. LeBron's team wins a championship. 2013, Alabama wins a national championship. LeBron's team wins the NBA title. 2014, Alabama loses the Sugar Bowl. LeBron loses in the NBA Finals. 2015, Alabama loses in the semis. LeBron James loses in the NBA Finals. 2016, Alabama wins a national championship. LeBron wins a national championship. 2017, Alabama loses national championship. LeBron loses in the NBA Finals. 2018, Alabama wins national championship.
I absolutely believe in historical trends.
Now you do.
As a born and raised in Cleveland, I think this is absolutely spot on.
So congratulations to LeBron and the Cavs for winning the championship, thanks to Nick Saban. A sentence that I really never thought I'd say in any way, shape, or form. But if you believe in trends, that's exactly what it is.
Oh, don't even.
Got what I need. Little Bismarck keeping us going here in Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. Phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, but we are, as always, delighted to have us in studio, the Commander-in-Chief, our NFL front office insider, Bill Polian, joining us to give us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. And Bill, if we're starting with Straight Talk, give me the straight scoop. If you're the Giants or any of these other teams, don't you make that phone call to Tuscaloosa and say, hey, Nick, why don't you come try and do it here, what you've done at Alabama so successfully?
It might be worthwhile dialing the phone.
Yeah.
Nick wouldn't pick it up. You'd have to talk to his agent.
Right.
But it might be worth a phone call.
What's the sell? I mean, if you're making that call, you obviously have to have a sales pitch for this. What would you say to that agent? Because I agree with you. You ain't getting in through to Nick. To have that agent even bring it to Nick?
Well, I think you need to have an established quarterback who's going to be there for the length of Nick's career in the NFL. The reason he didn't do well in Miami the first time around is because the Miami doctors wouldn't pass Drew Brees on his physicals. So they didn't get him as a free agent, and the history of the Miami
rest is history.
Yes, the rest. Now you know the rest of the story. So you're going to have one there for the long term. That's I think that would be the only thing that would cause him to be interested.
Would it be the only thing, or would he need control? Would he need?
I'm sure he's going to want control.
Okay,
yeah.
and do you think that works anymore? You can get away with that anymore?
You know, it's a difficult proposition. The definition of control is the practical definition of control is what the issue is, because the head coach in the NFL, and Nick knows this, having been in the NFL twice, is that the head coach can't control the process. The process has to be run by somebody else, the organization, the scouting department, the assignments, the compilation of the reports. The head coach comes in now in the process, but there's been a whole year's worth of work done before we get here. So somebody has to do that. Somebody has to be the boss of that operation, and he's got to choose that person and rely on that person. Now, I think he probably has a person in mind if he did that, who would be perfectly fine. But fans think that the head coach just simply comes in and says, I want this guy, I want that guy. That's not the way it works.
No, it's never the way that works. Absolutely.
The one advantage that any college coach has coming in to the NFL, and it lasts for 3 years, is that he knows up close and personal every top player because he's recruited them all.
Right.
He's studied them all.
Pete Carroll played that very much to his success in Seattle.
Absolutely, he did. It lasts only 3 years because the cycle goes away, and then you're not as plugged in as you used to be. You have to rely on the scouting department. But for a while, it lasts. That's a big advantage.
ESPN's NFL front office insider, Hall of Famer, and 6-time NFL Executive of the Year. That's a nice title. Bill Polian with us on Golic and Wingo this morning. Before we move on to something else, I just want to focus in on this one thing, because Bruce Arians said that the job that Nick has coveted has been the New York Giants. Now, obviously, they have a quarterback, but they're going to need a new quarterback. The fact that they have the second overall pick, would that make it enticing? Because Nick could bring in his guy to be the quarterback there.
Well, let's take Nick out of the equation. The job is enticing for 3 reasons. Number one, it's an iconic franchise.
Correct.
In the largest market in the world. Secondly, it's run on a day-to-day basis by the Mara family, who are themselves iconic, and you couldn't work for better people than the Maras. Third, you have the second pick in the draft. You got an aging quarterback who can still play, but he can see the end of his career coming, and you can draft, if you wish to, you can draft the understudy. So that makes it pretty appealing for anybody.
So take us now in your position in putting a team together for a team that has a high pick that needs a quarterback. It seems like Cleveland's in that position yet again. But just in general, for a high pick, and you have quarterbacks that look like are going to be high picks in this draft. But you also have quarterbacks that are going to be available. So what's your process now on do I take a Kirk Cousins, where I know the basement is $100 million and up? Do I look at one of these draft picks? I know it has to be deciding our grade. Do I draft for a guy like Alex Smith, though, who's 32 years old, and you have to put the age into it? Take us through the process now that GMs are going through that are in that position.
Cleveland's a special situation, so let's talk about them first. And it is, I hate to do this but it is laughable.
Yeah.
However,
I hate to do this to you. Let me shovel dirt on your grave.
However, here's the good part about it. You need to change the culture there. And you don't need a rookie to do that, I believe. They need to get a professional in there who's a winner, who can come in there and say, this is the way it's supposed to be done in the National Football League. Do you realize they don't have any veterans at all on that team? And they don't have one difference maker except for the defensive end from Texas A&M that they drafted number 1 last year. Everybody else is essentially a role player.
What about Josh Gordon if he's healthy? If he's mentally healthy.
You can't count on him. Yeah. You can't count on him.
You can't count on him until you can count on him.
That's exactly right. He's got to play a full season. Right. And by the way, he probably needs to quiet down, too.
Yeah.
For a guy that hasn't done anything in 3 years, he's got an awful lot to say.
Right.
That's one of the reasons why I think you need a veteran leader in there. So if I were there, I would, and far be it from me to tell John Dorsey how to do his job. He's a really good guy, and he's very competent, and that's a great hire, as is Elliott Wolf. But I think because of the losing culture that is there, and because you got Kaiser as a young understudy, let's find out what the heck the guy can do without having him under the sword of Damocles every week. I would go for a veteran there. Otherwise,
let me just say kudos for the sword of Damocles reference.
Yeah,
just put that one. No one else is bringing that today, so continue, my friend. Just want to put a little asterisk and a note by that one.
The bottom line is that that's a special situation. Now, in any other situation, let's say the Giants, you got to consider what the veteran's going to command, both in salary and Smith is going to command a salary too. You know, he's got 1 year left on his contract, so you're going to pay draft choice compensation and a new deal for him. So you got to figure what your salary cap is, what you've got committed to the guy who's already there, if you're the Giants, and whether or not you can make that work with a veteran. It seems to me that you would lean more toward a young understudy in that situation, pick the best guy and let him learn on the job, because none of the top three, as we said last year and we'll say again this year until we're blue in the face, are ready to play. Right. The UCLA kid is probably the most ready to play.
Josh Rosen.
Rosen, but still, we've seen with Goff, and you're not going to create Carson Wentz again. I mean, he's rare. So the Giants situation, I think Dave Gettleman, who by the way is exceedingly qualified and will do a great job for them, is probably inclined to if he's going to take a quarterback, let it be a young guy, because that fits salary cap wise.
Yeah. Can you stick around? We're going to look at the games this weekend, okay? Because obviously we deep dive in there, and there's so much to get into with what's going on and some of the hires. So he'll join us for another segment. It's the best weekend in the NFL. We'll get into that with Bill. Divisional round, or maybe we should call it conference semifinals. That seems gives it a little more gravitas, right? That's next on Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2. Golic and Wingo here with you, our Commander-in-Chief, Bill Polian, with us. Lots to get into with you, but real quickly, if you could rent out one thing for friends and family and just have a run of it for the day, is there something that you would have?
Yankee Stadium batting practice.
There you go. That's it. Somebody said Yankee Stadium, have a family and friends, a softball game, a barbecue, and Bobby Flay cooking everything up. That would be awesome.
So that's on the charts.
So before we get into look at some of the games, I wanted to ask you this. Being in the league a long time, obviously you've seen a lot of coaches and the wear and tear it can take on coaches. I bring this up because your son is a coach. He actually was coaching when my kids were at Notre Dame. But Brian is 43 years old. He's back at Notre Dame now. And this is indicative of a coach's life when you choose it. He started out, went from Michigan State to Buffalo to Baylor to Central Florida to Notre Dame to Stanford. Texas A&M, was the head coach at Nevada, and now back at Notre Dame. And he's 43. So you get in that life, you choose, you know that's going to happen. I thought it was interesting that Rich Gannon was flying to Oakland and decided in the air, said, you know what? It's just really come to my mind that this is not for me. I can't match Gruden's intensity and just what you need to do to be a coach in football, college, pros, whatever. You've seen a lot of coaches for a lot of years. Take us inside there a little bit and just how it can break a guy down being in there for that long.
Look, I often say that it is not a business or a vocation. It's really a calling. It's what you have to want to do it with your life. And you have to be married to someone who's willing to put up not only with the ups and downs and the frequent job changes, but raising your family largely alone and moving from place to place on a moment's notice. Just think about this just on moves alone. A coach leaves a staff now in college, major college, or the NFL, arrives at the new place. Let's say they have children in school, usually do, of school age, high school, junior high, whatever it may be. And husband takes off this coming Monday, opens up his briefcase, goes to his desk, meets his new colleagues, many of whom he probably knows already, and goes to work doing the same thing he's done. He lives in a hotel until June. His wife flies out probably 2, maybe 3 times if the employer is generous, and looks for a house, usually without him.
Right.
Buys the house, takes care of the closing, takes care of the move on the back end, all the while assuring the children that we'll go to a new school and you'll make friends and it'll be a nice adventure, and this is what Daddy does for a living. That's a really hard life for the people.
You have to be all about it.
How's Brian doing? I mean, listen,
his
wife
Brian. Is the ultimate football wife.
Yeah.
Lori is the ultimate
It seems
football
that
wife.
has to really be the key in the whole thing, the
surely
backbone
is.
of the family.
I once interviewed a head coaching candidate who was on his second marriage. And I said to him very sheepishly, I got to ask you this question only because someone's going to ask, what happened with the first marriage? He said, Bill, very simply, she wasn't a football wife. I said, that's it. I get it.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the answer.
Everybody's got to buy in. Yeah.
No question. Yeah. Okay, so let's pivot to the games this weekend, conference semifinal weekend. We'll just start calling it that. Mm-hmm. Which game most intrigues you? Atlanta, Philadelphia, Titans, Patriots, Jags, Steelers, Saints, Vikings?
Saints, Vikings.
Yeah, I think that's the game that a lot of people think could go one of two ways.
Yeah, it could, and even the style of game, I think, is in question. Because, first of all, it's an exceedingly loud building. It's every bit as loud as the Dome in New Orleans. And secondly, the style of play that the Vikings want to play is necessarily running game, play action pass. They're not afraid to open it up, but they also want to keep their defense off the field and keep them fresh because it's the best defense that's playing. Sean, on the other hand, has Drew Brees. He has Kamara. He has Ingram. He has Thomas. He's got weapons. And as you saw last week, his proclivity is, let's go, man. Step on the gas. When in doubt, step on the gas. This thing could turn into a shootout quickly, depending upon what the styles of play are and how the matchups go. And the toughest matchup of all, I believe, of all of the games, is the tandem of Ingram and Kamara in the game. Because if you move Kamara out the way Pittsburgh does with Le'Veon Bell, and you put him out as a receiver, who matches with him?
Right.
Harrison Smith? I think that's the one thing Harrison Smith doesn't do exceptionally well is cover really fast and slippery guys one-on-one.
It sounds a lot like how the Patriots have built their running backs, James White and Deion Lewis. They get them in those one-on-one matchups with linebackers or safeties as well in the passing game. But tell you what, the one thing about that the Panthers were able to do, Bill, against the Saints is that they could bottle up Kamara and Ingram, and they did. I think held them to 40-plus yards, but then Drew Brees just cut that secondary up. That secondary of Minnesota is a lot better than the secondary of Carolina.
You're absolutely right. The one area that worries me with the Saints, particularly last week, remember years ago, until Denny Allen took over as the coordinator, every week you would watch continual busts. Guys couldn't get lined up.
Right.
This guy took the wrong guy. Guys running free in the secondary. That happened again last week. I said to the people I was watching the game with, it must be the air in the dome. There must be something, there must be a virus in the air that caused busts in the secondary. Well, Vaccaro wasn't there to get everybody lined up, and he probably won't be there this week. So he won't. He's an injured reserve. Right. So that is the Achilles heel, if you will, of a terrific defensive turnover. Can they play mistake-free in the secondary? Because I'll tell you this about Case Keenum. He gets an open guy, he'll hit him.
He's not a game manager. He's played above the X's and O's this year.
And listen, between Diggs and Thielen, those guys have really stepped it up this year.
How about Rudolph?
Rudolph's been that red zone target again. And
McKinnon.
And I love the fact
receivers
of we talk about getting the backs out of the backfield. Not only you look for the mismatch, but you look for that how they dictate coverage. You can see by who's covering initially. Is it going to be a man? Is it going to be zone? You can get a lot with that pre-snap read with that running back out.
And that's exactly what the Zim and the Vikings do so well. Harrison will show you. He's the wild card.
Right.
He'll show you a box read.
Right.
And then back off immediately.
Right. Bill, as always, we appreciate the wisdom. Thanks so much.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.